Hi everyone, welcome to the LinkedIn studio at Cannes. I'm Andrew Monu, VP of Marketing at LinkedIn. Let's sit with something for a second. The problem with B2B creative isn't actually the creative, it's where it runs. Great work that's in the wrong environment isn't going to build trust with the buying committee. And so we need to think about how we're actually going to be creating visibility for creative in the right way. I'm going to be talking to agency leaders who are basically doing the best B2B campaigns in the world. And we're going to be unpacking what it takes to make great B2B marketing creative land. So welcome Amy and welcome Jen. And let's... Hi. So we're going to actually just do some quick intros. So who you are, what you do, and Amy, you want to go first?
Yes, Amy Lanzi. I am the CEO of Digitas North America, which is part of Publicis Group. And one of the things we like to do is surprise and delight our clients. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Love it.
Hey, I'm Jenny Quigley-Jones, the VP of Strategy and Partnerships at PMG. I'm getting used to that because I was the CEO of Digital Voices, which is an influencer marketing agency that was acquired about 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
It's lots of fun. Done a lot of B2B, and I think making B2B influencer marketing work is this whole other challenge that people are just waking up to the power of.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to be talking about that.
A lot.
All right.
Just teed you up there. You know?
It was perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's start. Right, so, okay, tell me. Placement can be just as important to campaign success as the creative itself. Why is it important to think about where creative is going to live from the start of the brief? And can you share an example where the platform or the environment helped to shape the creative idea? Who wants to go first?
Want to start?
I'm happy to start.
Go first. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Right. So I think when you think about designing a strategy for B2B, you have to be so much more careful and considered and really think about your customer, what mindset they're in, what they're looking for, and then how to build trust. Because if you don't build trust, you've wasted a lot of money. And that buying decision takes so much longer than a B2C purchase. And you have to bring more people on the journey. So it really, really has to resonate. And it also has to be interesting enough that they want to talk about the product at work, which is really hard to do. Yep. So we find that when we're thinking about strategy, we always start with who is the customer and where are they spending their time? And when they're on their platform, what mindset are they in? So that then shapes how you design an entire campaign. So for example, we've run B2B campaigns where, there was one where we had to reach IT decision makers in the UK only, which is very interesting, fun challenge. And we had to, the brand was like, just get their email addresses. Like, we know we can sell, get their email addresses. So we were trying to work out how to get through to these people in a way that wasn't like, come to another conference. Because that's saturated and they don't really want to attend work events. You have to think, what are they really passionate about? So we went through all these IT decision maker interests and found it was actually YouTube creators that were making this content about computer science, about maths, about, I don't know, tech, about like really weird things you might not know about the world. And then we created a thing called the Techie Test. So each of these influencers created an individual tech question that you could enter on the company's website to win a prize. And to win the prize, you had to give your email address, your work email address. You had to answer this technical question correctly to make sure you're speaking to IT people. And it was really interesting because YouTube really worked for the long form engagement. And then LinkedIn was a really great reminder of, hey, you should enter, or if you've entered, post about it. Right. And then we messed with the prizes. So the first year, we were like, let's try tickets to South by Southwest. We were like, tech people will love this. They get to go to Austin. Like, who would say no? Like, 10,000 entries. Fine, it was fine. It was during COVID, you know, coming up to COVID, so it was once we get out of COVID, you'll get to go. The next year, we were like, let's try a different prize, because maybe the prize wasn't motivating. And so we did, you get like $7,000 worth of kit.
So this is the A/B test.
The A/B test, yeah. Right. Yeah, so we were like, how do we test this? You get $7,000 worth of your dream IT setup at home. We had 40,000 entries for a really similar campaign. And the client was like, these people open their email at the higher rate than our average, the higher rate than people who come through Google search. They were like, this captured the right audience and retained their interest. So sometimes it's thinking about the strategy creatively, like really think about your customer, what do they want? But also then how do you use the platforms to kind of use their specific magic to drive action.
And that wasn't necessarily about massive budget. It was actually just really understanding what the audience needed.
Yeah, and that audience was so valuable to that client because one decision maker is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So yeah, it made such a big difference.
Love it. Amy?
Yeah. One of the things that we like to do is think about the human side of B2B, because people that are B2B buyers are also people too.
What?
They are.
And so to your question on, starting with understanding them as humans and where they're spending time, where they're spending their dollars, it is a 9-month purchase cycle. So how are we using, for us, it's our Epsilon, how do we start to understand them in the wild? What kind of cars they drive? What kind of, do they play golf, or do they like to ride a bike, or whatever those things are, so that as you're starting to get to them as an individual before you're getting into a buying community, what are some of those signals that we can take to harness to start to recruit them in? Then when you think about the campaign, what are those signals that we see? So is it that we should be investing in some sort of sporting event to counter everyone needs to go to Las Vegas for an event? That's great, but that may not be the only way to do it. To then think of what are those moments that really will capture them and be fuel for creativity, and then think about the right partners that we should invest with as we get down the buying cycle. So the first moment of attention, and that's all about learning, and you said it, we call it the currency of trust, to then get the community, the buying community, to come along, because it's all about share of influence, really, as an example. And for one of the businesses that we work on that's investor related, we found that there were some actually interesting things to do, not only on LinkedIn, but also just high impact, like taking over the Sphere in Las Vegas, but in a way that broke through this idea of curiosity. So that you're getting this high impact moment. It's got a lot of human talk value, which then you can then surround sound when they do give that email at an event, to be able to then retarget them and talk to them in a very contextual manner. But it's really starting with the human side of it, so you know more about them versus their B2B jobs, because we're all people too.
Yes.
I really feel like I need you folks' expertise on this. So my birthday is next month, and I'm going to turn 50, which is a big deal. And I really, my favorite band of all time is The Roots.
Okay.
And I really want my wife to buy the tickets to The Roots. They're really expensive. And I want her to be influenced. And I think I'm going to need your agency influence on this. Should I just play music, like The Roots, her favorite Roots song, and then just be like, hey, I was thinking maybe we could go to the Roots concert or something. Is that what I should do? Is that the best way to influence?
Did you not just communicate directly and ask for what you want?
How? I'm
so sorry, not offering marriage counseling at a B2B session.
I would offer that we talked about Texas. I'm from Texas, and this is a little bit of the warm up. So this is a skill for a lot of my Texas friends, where you might just say, thinking, I really like The Roots. We should go to that concert. Just drop it. And then she's going to hear you. And then you might say it again. You might maybe tell a friend. This is the buying committee.
Ooh, I like.
Can you mention I really want to do the thing? And then all of a sudden, she's going to be like, you know what, happy 50th, which, by the way, we're all 29 in this business.
Yeah.
Happy 50th, I got you these tickets. You're like, how did you know? But that's a little bit of a
So I've got a direct option, I've got a
influence.
nurture.
Or you could just, message The Roots and pay them to do content that's,
That is
targeted
a
to your
bigger
wife.
budget.
Well, if you want to have a direct conversation, that's not our problem.
Okay, so I've got direct, I've got nurture. It can't be as long as it takes for the average B2B cycle, because that's 220 days. I don't have that much time, but I like the strategy.
I love that you see this situation like a B2B campaign.
Every situation is
B2B campaign.
You could layer into it a creator that is maybe covering a Roots song, and you might send that to her and say, hey, this is awesome. Remember the time we listened to the Roots thing? Or I don't know if you've gone on a date, and then that's another channel. That's Creators a Channel.
I literally have the answer.
Joint playlist on Spotify.
Okay, this is done. Thank you. This is really helpful.
You're welcome. Happy birthday.
I actually have another question that is more related to not my life. But
so disappointed.
So let's talk a little bit more about placement.
Yeah.
So we know that not all B2B creative lands with equal impact. So what separates work that gets seen from work that actually just earns trust? And, how do you think placement actually influences trust. You kind of touched on it a little bit with
Yes.
my roots
It
example.
is the sphere of influence is very important, and one of the things that we do is once we understand the buying audience or buying committee, how we can find them across paid, earned, shared, and owned. And they all matter. I think sometimes you have clients that only are focused on paid and they're missing the earned part, which is very important, especially when we think about our friendly LLMs and how we're making sure that we are showing up in a favorable way. And then you get into shared and owned. And to me, there's also the opportunity in that. So if I'm creating a networked experience, which is what we talk about at Digitas, how do I surrounding this single person or the buying committee in all the ways that I can get their attention through trust. So I think the owned channel, so CRM, is a lost art here. You mentioned email. And if I send you 15 emails, except for you going to the Roots concert, I'm going to be really annoying. And that is something that immediately turns off my trust factor because you're not listening to me. Because I'm not responding. You would never send me 15 emails. Neither one of you. But we do this sometimes when we think about the balance of paid and owned as an example. So it's like how you map that opportunity to build a network of influence through paid, earned, shared, and owned, and then how you make sure you're either dialing up or dialing down based on the reaction you're getting from the consumer or the buying committee.
And then it's interesting because you're thinking about it in such a holistic campaign way. For the influencer piece, we have to think like which creators do we work with on different platforms and what's the message on each platform. So it's all in this earned bucket. So we find that, so we did a campaign, a B2B campaign, targeting people who are doing media planning. So it was really a really weird target market to have. And so some of the content was LinkedIn, some was YouTube, and some was TikTok and Instagram. And on TikTok, we could be funny. We could make we could tap into trends like, you're going to sit here and listen while my husband tells you about his business and how he sells on Amazon. And so you could be really playful, you could do memes, but if you do that on LinkedIn, people don't resonate they like a degree of humor, but if they're publicly going to be liking it and their boss is going to see that they're liking these memes and these jokes, often that really resonate, like I hate my job, you can't do that on LinkedIn. So we found like the meme comedy worked so well on TikTok. And then on LinkedIn, it was much more like, here's my personal business journey story and what transformed it, really clear takeaways, like the edutainment side. So there was some video content and like some listicle content, or like we're dropping guides. But again, you think when your consumer is on LinkedIn, what mode and mindset are they in? And it's like, oh, I feel kind of productive while I'm on social media. You know, oh, I want something that my boss will see if I like this, my colleagues will see, so you can't be too out there. So I think you just have to also think like placement switches and content switches based on the mindset your consumer's in on that.
The mindset and the behavior you're going to expect based on that environment. Totally makes sense.
I would add to the brand, not all brands can carry across all platforms from a narrative standpoint. Especially in the B2B space. So if you're pushing it too much, you either have to let the creator tell the story, like you're saying, but sometimes even that's a stretch. So it's in this space, I feel that there's a desire to be a little too cheeky sometimes, and unless the brand can carry it, the brand that I mentioned earlier, like we're talking about investor community, so there's not a lot of fun to be had here. Like we need to be serious. It's serious. It's a serious topic. But how does that then translate in that platform in a way that also feels very authentic from a brand voice
and still human, right?
And still human, right? So you're still working on that single insight, but the delivery of the narrative through the platform is a way to think about, is that overarching platform, is it fit for all your needs? Is it timely or timeless? And then how do we make sure it feels authentic on the platform?
We did a panel this morning about creators' approach to AI. And it was really interesting because all the creators said, if we talk about using AI too much, our audience, the trust goes, they will crucify us. They use the word crucify. And I was like, and it's at the AI and Tech Sandbox. So I was like, awkward times. But what was really interesting was they were saying all brands are now trying to get them to sell everything, every call to action in one sponsored message. They're also trying to get them to list every AI feature rather than, you're right, like thinking about it as a life cycle. Like if it's a 9-month buying decision, stop trying to put every message in every piece of content. Like, yes, you might have an AI feature, but if someone isn't doing the basics, stop talking about the feature. You're
It's like
too
you're
far
trying to
down.
rush the behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not how, we know that's not how B2B users buy. So why are we trying to get creators in their content to say like 15 different things that sound scripted and then overwhelm people? And one of my favorite phrases in terms of like business and life is the confused brain says no. When people are confused, they don't go, oh, I'll go research. They go, get it away from me.
Yes.
Yep.
And I think that's sometimes where with B2B buying, you're pushing too much, too fast, and you're hoping for a transaction that's speedier than we know to expect from all the data.
Right. Because you're trying to actually you're trying to put in lots of things that you think will build trust. This feature is so great, and we're the best at this feature, and actually we have proven these things. And you add all those things, you're like, more trust, more trust, more trust. And actually you're going, less trust, less trust. Like,
Leave me alone.
right.
Less is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's also interesting in this space is when you're working with B2B clients, these decisions could be career-ending decisions. So when you're buying confectionery, that's not a career-ending decision.
Yeah.
That's a moment in time, right? And it's a heavy task when someone says to you, "This is a decision that I have to represent, I have to defend to this committee." And so more confusograms, to your point, isn't going to help them have a single business case story to tell whoever they have to, to commit to this decision.
Just on that note, so speaking about, needing to defend a decision, do you need to think differently about creative when you're trying to get it on that final shortlist? Because there's the piece at the beginning where you're just trying to get on the day one shortlist with a bunch of other vendors, and then there's the point where actually you're down to your final 2 or 3. Is there something that you think about differently from a strategic or creative perspective?
We definitely do, because when you're getting closer and closer to the buy, that's more senior in an org who is probably looking at this about what is the elevator speech to then take into a board, to take to their CEO, which is very different than where you started. And so it has to be crystal. It has to feel like one slide that could be in a board deck. That's very different than a 2-hour creative presentation where you have the time to sell the ideas. One of the clients I work with always says to me, make sure that you can defend it in a text. And if you actually think about that, I could probably sell you an idea, because if it's a really good idea or a line or whatever it is, you're like, that's a great idea. And I don't really have to explain it to you. So that's a very good for everyone to use as a way to assess the things you're doing. So if you're taking it to your boss, can you explain it to me in a sentence?
Can I explain it in a
And that means you've really thought about it because you understand this single proposition and why that is the thing, that is the absolute best decision that you should do.
So, to your point, you're influencing someone, let's say, more senior. There's also the buyer group that you're trying to build consensus with. So are there things you think about from human, emotional, strategic triggers as well that you're trying to use to build that consensus in the buyer group? Is there anything you do differently there? Whichever you wants to go first.
Yeah. Someone said yesterday, it's something really, I love being at Cannes because you get to hear these drops of wisdom, and I don't want to claim that's my
Do you mean me?
Sadly, it was yesterday, but I will quote you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Someone said B2B doesn't have necessarily a lead generation problem, it has an advocacy problem. And I think that by the time you get to that stage where you're in the room with all 13 stakeholders, they know often that you can do the job.
Yep.
The thing they want is a moment where they feel excited to use the product. And they want a moment where someone's willing to put their hand up and be like, I love this company. Which for B2B is really hard because it's not often the sexiest product. Yeah. So I think it's how can you build those advocates? So I often think it's interesting. It's by the time the marketing agency at that point has normally left the room. By the time we've got down to the final 2, it's, do people think your support team is good? Do they think your training team is good? Have they got the information? Have they attended an event? Do they feel delighted? Do they like the other customers you work with? Are those examples good? And I often think often the marketing agency has stepped out at that point. I think it's your product is actually the differentiator. And getting people to really want to advocate for your product is very hard. But it's where you have to, I think, add a human touch and add investment at those stages.
To me, there's if you start 220 days out, you're dialing up emotion and the proof of the success of the human. As you get closer, you're dialing up functional benefits, features, things that are easy reasons to show yes, no. That then makes it more of like a check mark as you're getting closer and closer to this committee, because it's a scorecarding exercise, to your point, and typically the marketing people are not in the room. And I think that's it. But you've earned your way in with a single human through a more of a overarching over-indexing on being human, versus then as you get down the proverbial funnel or this buying cycle, it's really about features. You're going to point to it. They have a better customer success team.
Yeah.
I liked Joe. Whatever those things are that are more feature oriented.
And do clients buy into the complexity of the buyer group? Because I think sometimes what can happen is in the same ways you're basically going, hey, I'm going to fit everything in this one message so that they get all the features that they need to know. There's also the bit where you go, it's almost like you caught a fish too early. Like, I got one, let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
this is like a bane of mine. No, I don't think they do think about it.
okay.
I have designed so many campaigns in my head that I'm really excited about that might never see the light of day, but they're all about how do you get the buyer group excited. Right. So there's one idea. Please, someone make this campaign. I don't care if it's me. At this stage, like it's done. It could be anyone.
I'm listening.
I really want someone doing a B2B campaign to do partners with a lot of hobbyists and interests that C-suite people tend to have. So whether that's wine collecting, golf, whatever. And there's a competition and there's a prize that's like your senior leadership team get a golf lesson with this YouTube golfer. Yeah. And I think that's like a great way to get the whole buying committee at least engaged in the process. Yeah. I think like B2B, it's often a very boring process. So it's like, how do you make the product or the decision so exciting someone wants to talk about it to their colleagues? Right. Because it's like, am I going to ask you about the Roots concert you went to? Or am I going to ask you about like, well, what do you think about this API tool? Right. Like, always, it's going to be the human thing. So how do you make the B2B decision a human moment of connection? So anyone, please suggest it to everybody.
Okay, we'll do that.
I just think the golf thing would be so, a sailing lesson, a golf lesson, a wine tasting lesson. Like, I think it would be great.
I do think to this, you talked about events, and I actually think the use of events is in the wrong part of the buying journey. I think events work better when you're trying to get the buying committee together. So we have many clients that invest in golf, you insert sport, F1. F1 does really well here in B2B community. Part of it also is you get the buying committee to be able to talk IRL about the final decision.
Yes.
Probably doing that here at Cannes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's an important part of your buying journey. So you start that context, and then how do you then move from that human first recruiting in to now like the features that help basically convert the decision.
Yeah, I love it. That moment where having that discussion is something enjoyable.
Yeah. Yes. Because the human logic also applies to the buying committees. So, all of us have purchased at a home near a place where someone important lives for a reason, right? So they see it and they're like, hey, that's a good idea. And it's like, we did that, right? I'm sure that look around here, I can, right? There's lots of people plotting things for the B2B community. And that's also something that if you think about your placement point, how they work across all the opportunities as a system to surround sound the single buyer or the buying committee.
Yeah. I really like that point you made around how not every brand is going to actually translate across like every platform, every environment. Because I think there's a temptation to go, well, like that's the playbook. Like everyone should do that in every scenario. Is that difficult to kind of push back against because I think sometimes what happens, like I can think about it from my own perspective where I go, if I see, I don't know, some competitor or some marketer doing something across a bunch of things, I go, we should totally do that. Why wouldn't we do that? How do you deal with that?
To me, there's a difference between competitive energy. You see a competitor that's doing X versus, do we really think someone's going to make this decision? Like when you think about how they're spending time on certain platforms, that may not be a buying moment, that's a professional buying moment. So if it's a platform that skews more entertainment, think about that. Just like when we were doing, you make decisions when you're buying through content on a non-social partner, that's a lean back moment. Maybe people aren't really in the space when they're streaming their favorite show. So it's the same
so you
logic.
Just use common sense.
Yeah, so when you say that, and then you say, if we want to do it, and this is what you are an expert at, is let's use the creators to tell the stories, not features, not the listicles, but actually tell their human story. Then see if that rises. And it's also de-risking you trying to go out there through paid as a brand, because the minute you do that, you lose trust. But creators can be your best friend to hype in a place that you want to play in.
Yeah, this happens so much when you're at an agency and it's like, oh, so-and-so did this, we should copy it. I often find it's like a yes and.
Okay.
So you're like, yeah, that's a great idea. And also, how about we test this other approach at the same time? Right. Because sometimes we all have these ideal campaigns. I think we do. We all have these ideal campaigns in our head. If you're really geeky like me and you're obsessed over work, you're like, the dream campaign for Chase would be. But I think, in all honesty, the best campaign is the campaign that gets made. And it's hard because your dream isn't often the one that gets made. And the same way buyers have dreams because they see competitors and they want to copy it, like we have dreams in our head of amazing campaign ideas that don't happen. Yeah. So I think it's like you harness the enthusiasm. You'd be like, yes, okay, you like TikTok. Why? Because of creators. Cool, well, we could test those creators and also test them on LinkedIn and also do paid ads from that so you could test it on other platforms. And I think it's just trying to harness that moment of, great, I see why you want to do it. But if you want to do that, you can't just copy someone else. How do you amplify it further? And I don't know, I love harnessing the excitement of buyers, even if it comes from the wrong place, if it comes from that competitor dodgy place.
You can learn in all of these places, but then you also have to make change once you've learned something. Right, so if you're creating campaigns that someone is absolutely committed to never changing, okay, that's not going to work in your test and learn approach. But the idea of putting something out there and being willing to say, that was awful, we need to change that, is also kind of a wonderful working environment. To say we tried TikTok, whatever the thing is, and it's just not ringing the bell, or someone sees and is like, should we have done that? Yeah. And like then you let it ride, and then you're able to then have an honest conversation. And it also might help fine tune. I find a lot of brands, they want to be in all these places, and in a world of trust as well as LLMs, it's actually like, what do you want to be the answer for? So if you really want to be the answer for making someone be better at their desktop, whatever that thing is this the place you think they go for advice for that?
Got it.
And let's be very reductive on what you want to be the answer for versus being found. Yeah. Those are two different things.
I got one last question. It's a quick fire one. So if we take Jenny's point around the best campaign is the one that gets made, if you could have had a better campaign, what is like the number one thing that B2B marketers are missing? What's the number one thing we don't listen to you about that we should?
I think it's dialing up the humanity and fun versus being so business to business. Right. I know that sounds silly, but our work and life is so blurred to this whole conversation. So lean into it. Versus I put on my professional hat and then I'm in my consumer life, but lean it into a way that feels like a brand of service in every across all facets of your life. I'd like to see more of that versus the brief that turns the 9-month and ABM, and it's very sterile. Yeah. So it's like, how do we be more human?
Yeah. Love it. Bring us home.
I think especially in this saturated world we're moving into, which is there is so much content, so much AI, so much slop. Strategy is your differentiator. So it is table stakes to be omnipresent. And I think B2B has a harder task than B2C because you have to influence more people, you have to target and pinpoint them, and it's a longer buying cycle. The payoff's there. Yeah. So you have to invest more in truly thinking about a strategy that will resonate with that human. And that's where I am excited for the potential ahead of us.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us at the LinkedIn studio at Cannes. I promised you expertise from two world-class agency leaders. And I got so much more. I got advice about how to get my Roots tickets. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Just send your wife this.